Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with a very much so requested model. This is one I've had so many people asking me if I was ever going to review, and it took so long for it to actually release through Big Bad Toy Store, but we finally now have it. It is the Prime 1 Prime Collectibles figure 1/38 scale Jurassic World Dominion Giganotosaurus, and I'm really excited to check this one out because even though a lot of people don't necessarily enjoy the Giganotosaurus from Dominion, I actually love it, and I love the design for it, so pretty darn excited to check out the Prime 1 version of it. The packaging looks pretty fun, but nothing too amazing. It's pretty much your standard. It's fairly heavy, I will say that, because it does have a pretty big figure in there. You can kind of see the figure, but it's wrapped in plastic, so it's kind of obscured a little bit in there. If we turn the box around, though, you can see a really nice shot of the figure here on the back. Obviously, that's the, original painted prototype, so I don't know if the version that we have in here is going to turn out quite as nice as we see on the back of the box. I know Prime 1 models often don't have the same paint quality that their prototypes do, especially in this line. I've noticed that a lot of them have had fairly questionable paintwork for them, but I'm excited to check out this Giganotosaurus nonetheless, so I'm going to pop it out of the box, bring it in, and we'll do just that. So here is our Giganotosaurus now in all of its glory, and I must say it looks pretty cool, but at the same time it's not nearly as nice when it comes to the paintwork, not even close to as nice as the paintwork on the prototype, but it's also not nearly as nice when it comes to the paintwork as some other versions of the Giga out. Like if you look at the Nanmu version, the Nanmu version in my opinion is definitely superior to this one when it comes to the overall paint. Just some of the dry brushing techniques they've used, rather than highlighting the scale detail in a nice natural way, just look generic and more childish than it should. Overall, I think the paintwork is all right for it, but it definitely could have been better. And that's kind of the way it works, I think, for most of these Prime 1 1/38 scale figures, is more often than not, the paintwork is usually questionable. Like, it's passable, I should say, actually, but it's not great. They never really reach the levels that they do when it comes to their larger statues. Like, a lot of their larger statues, I feel like, are usually pretty darn nice, but when it comes to these figures, not always the same case. But it does still look really cool, so let's jump to a closer look and check it out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Giganotosaurus, I think the head sculpt is really nicely done. They've absolutely captured the likeness of the Giga perfectly, if you ask me. The head sculpt, in my opinion, is like the exact skull shape and everything to the way you see it on the Giganotosaurus in Dominion, and it seems like many companies kind of have a hard time capturing that, so it is really nice to see that Prime 1 really have captured that perfectly as far as the way I remember it being. They even have that tear in the gums and everything here, basically in the jawline where you can see the exposed gums. They've even captured that nicely, which is also a very small detail many others miss. The skin texture of the face also looks really good. You've got all sorts of really nice variation to the sizes of the scales throughout. The eye paint is really nicely done, which you can see there with the nice green tone and the black eye, the black pupil I mean, and then you can see a nice gloss coat on it. The one thing that's a little bit of a bummer for me here is looking at the face, you do have that kind of grayish tone to it, almost with like a light hint of green, which I feel like is really nicely done, but the darker tone should be a little more abundant here in the face. Like you can see it very kind of in a very small way striped down right here through the palate area, but there should be more of it through the course of the face, and it should also be a little bit more impressive as far as the size. So that's one thing that instantly is a little bit of a bummer for the figure. I feel like they should have paid a little more attention to the way that the patterning looks and works on the face. We can see the nostrils sculpted nicely though. The mouth is sculpted in an open position. We can see the teeth look excellent as far as the sculpt goes. The paint also looks pretty nice. You can even see chipped teeth and everything on the inside of the mouth for the Giga, which is super, super cool. We can see the skin stretching here with the mouth open. Honestly, there's not much in the way of detail in that area. It's almost like smoothed out, which is kind of surprising. The paintwork is okay, as you have a pinkish tone there, a darker pinkish tone than you see for the inside of the mouth, but it's just not really that impressive. But as you lead into the inside of the mouth, you can see the tongue there, again, with that nice light pinkish tone that they have applied. It's fairly decently sculpted overall. Not crazy impressive, but decent enough. And you can see the detail. Well, maybe you can if I can get a nice angle for it. So you can see the detail on the inside of the mouth on the upper side looks pretty good. Nice pinkish tone, and they've also applied a nice darker wash in there to help highlight the detail, which is a huge plus. As you lead down into the lower jaw, here's one of those areas where the dry brushing just looks really bad. Like specifically in this spot, you can very clearly see that's not body color. You can very clearly see that is a very poor attempt at dry brushing, which does not look very good, does not look very natural, and is probably one of my biggest complaints when it comes to the Prime 1 figures. However, when we come up to the top of the head, I think they did a really good job when it comes to dry brushing the darker tones out up here and allowing that lighter tone to kind of creep through all of the scales, something that I would have liked to have seen through the course of the entire figure, because the paintwork up here I feel like is excellent. That looks really good, and the sculpt work also looks really nice. As you lead back into the neck, we continue to have that darker tone moving along the back of the body. We also pick up those ridges and that kind of armored look moving along the back of the Giga, which is also how you see it in the film. I feel like there should be more kind of striping and patterning down when it comes to that darker tone as you lead down the neck, rather than just kind of overtaking the back of the body. So that doesn't really look that great, but at least the application is kind of natural. It just doesn't perfectly capture the likeness to the Giganotosaurus from the film. You can see kind of like those sort of scoots, those like softer scoots moving along the underside of the neck and throat for the Giga are captured nicely here on this version, and we basically just continue to have that grayish body color with the dry brushing, and that's primarily it. There should be more variation of color to the figure, like even some hints of like brownish tones and maybe even greenish tones, as the gray does kind of have a slight greenish tint to it, but some brownish tones and stuff. But that's if they were really trying to capture a very high quality paint job, which clearly they were not. As you move down through the course of the body, you do pick up those kind of larger ridges, almost like that hump on the back of the Giganotosaurus here. You can also continue to see the armored look moving along with the very armored scoots. They're all painted pretty nicely. I can actually see some slight variation of color, even almost some slight hints of blues, which you can see right here, which is pretty intriguing. But you can see an injury right here, and the Giganotosaurus from Dominion definitely is a bit torn up, definitely has, some injuries and scars and stuff throughout, and you can see one right here, and they have painted it out with like a purplish tone, it looks like, which is nice to see. As you lead down, you see a little bit more of that patterning moving into the side of the dinosaur, but again, it's just very lackluster. It should just look a little bit better, whereas they basically just kind of put some slight striping down and then just a few random spots. You can tell the painters for Prime 1 were not concerned with capturing the likeness perfectly, just basically the gist of the figure, which is what they did, really. And as you move down into the arm, you can see the musculature of the arm looks pretty good. You've got some scoots moving down along the back of the arm, nice bend in the elbow, and then you lead down here into the hands. You can see the hands are sculpted quite nicely. They have dry brushed the detail out there. As far as the scoots moving down the fingers, pretty decently. You can also see the nails are painted with a nice glossy black. Same deal for the opposing hand over there. As you lead down to the underside, you continue to see that same type of scale detail that you saw up there in the throat moving along the underside, like those softer kind of scoots down there. We can also see the scale detail does look really nice in the stomach region. The sculpt on this honestly is excellent. Definitely one of the best, if not the best, as far as the sculpt goes when it comes to the Jurassic World Dominion Giganotosaurus I've seen. But it's the paint where the figure is lacking. As you continue to move back, though, you still see, again, very impressive fine detail. You see more of that dry brushing, of course, following through the course of the body. As you lead down, you've got some scoots moving along the front of the thigh. The muscle definition very nicely shown off. You can see a seam kind of where the leg was connected, but it's not a big deal. As you move down, the knee is present right there. You've got a nice big bulging calf muscle. And then as you lead down further, the foot sculpt, I think, is actually really nicely sculpted and painted. Oddly enough, that may be one of my favorite areas of the figure as a whole when it comes to the paintwork. It just looks really nice, and there's even more variation of color, I feel like, down there in the feet than you see elsewhere. It looks quite realistic, and you can see the nails are also painted nicely again with a black tone, and we can see the dew claw as well. Well, we could before my camera lost focus. But as we lead back up, you see more injuries and stuff. As you lead out, you can see kind of chunks taken out of the back of the tail. Again, just as you do see on the Giganotosaurus in Dominion, you can see they as well, again, are painted with the purplish and actually pinkish tones in there. And this is another area where there should just be more to the patterning. As you lead out through the tail, you should see kind of more like kind of designing leading out rather than just straight up striping. The Giganotosaurus just has more to it than that. So again, it's like they kind of took the coloration and paint scheme of this dinosaur and just gave it the most generic, lackluster version of it. But as you lead out, again, sculpt-wise, it looks absolutely gorgeous. You see all sorts of injuries and scars and stuff again. As you continue to lead through the tail, you've got another chunk taken out back here. And then as you lead out, you've got a nice little curve out there at the tip of the tail. Very nice, armored, very crocodilian look for the tail. As I smack the camera, turning the Giga around. As you lead over here to the opposing side, I almost feel like it looks actually a little better when it comes to the paintwork here, but still, again, not perfect. Like there should be a stripe leading down here, and then a little bit more in the eye and even back here, whereas there just really is not much going on when it comes to the paintwork of this version of the Giganotosaurus. I am happy to see a little extra variation of color on the inside of the mouth where the skin is stretching right there, making that look at least a little bit better. The dry brushing also looks slightly better on this side compared to the other side, but still not really that great. As you lead down into the neck, the area here in the neck also looks better because, again, on the other side, the darker tone basically overtook the entire area of the neck here, whereas this side, we actually do have that kind of striping and patterning like it should have. So a little inconsistent when it comes to the paintwork from one side to the other, but it does at least look a little better, I think, on this side. As we lead back, you can see the arm is also in a slightly different position, but not too much as far as a different position. You can see more injuries again back here in the stomach as you lead along. Actually, the upper part of the stomach leading toward the back, more again purplish paintwork added to that area. And then as we lead back, you can see how this leg is taking a step forward. The leg sculpt overall looks absolutely awesome. The paintwork also looks fairly decent over here. I would say even better than the other side. You can see again another injury right there, and you've got that really nice looking foot sculpt. Again, the paintwork, I think, of the feet of this figure are just so much better than most of the other areas of the figure, which is strange to say. But then you lead back up, and again, as you lead out into the tail, you see more of those injuries, again, painted and sculpted out quite nicely. Sort of lackluster patterning as well on this side leading out, but it does look fairly decent overall. And then the base also looks pretty decent, but it also pretty much just looks like the bases always do when it comes to these models. Same style paint, same style sculpt, and everything, but it does have, if I can carefully turn this, the Jurassic World Dominion logo down there on the base, which is pretty fun. And then if we turn it to the underside, you can now see again it is the Giganotosaurus. It is a limited edition, and we see that I have 166, which is my limited edition number. It is also really stable on the base. It's actually kind of hard to get it into the base, but once you actually get it on there, that base is honestly on there really nicely, so it helps to make the figure super stable. But it is an absolutely awesome sculpt with some fairly okay paintwork. As far as a size goes, it's pretty darn huge. For a length from the tip of the tail to the snout, about 23¼ inches or 59 centimeters. And then the highest point would be those ridges on the back of the neck, about a little over 9¼ inches, heading toward 9½, but not quite, or about the 23½, heading toward 24 centimeters, but not quite. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Jurassic World Dominion Giganotosaurus from Prime 1, and you can see, as I said, it's pretty darn huge, definitely drastically larger than every other figure here. For a few more randoms, we also have a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus next to the Giganotosaurus. When it comes to the Jurassic World Dominion style Giga, I would say that this is probably the largest one I have that's not like a Mattel figure. When it comes to the more high quality models that are out that I personally own, I feel like this one's going to be a bit larger than everybody else. And to show you that, first of all, we have the Dino Dream version of the Giganotosaurus, which you can see the Prime 1 version is definitely a good bit larger. And then we've also got the Nanmu version of the Giganotosaurus, which you can see again next to the Prime 1 version is a little bit smaller. I would definitely say looks a lot better as far as the paintwork though. Definitely way better paintwork on the Nanmu version over the Prime 1 version, but still again the Prime 1 version is definitely the largest of these Gigas. And just to iron out one final comparison to kind of give you an idea of the size of this Prime 1 Giga, here is a Mattel Extreme Damage T-Rex, which you can see is actually roughly the same size as the Giganotosaurus from Prime 1. The Giga might have a little bit more body mass and a little bit more tail length, but overall they are very similar in size. I don't really know what else to compare the Giga with, honestly, because it's again a good bit larger than most other figures, so I don't know that there's much that will compare well with it. If there were any comparisons that you maybe wanted to see, let me know in the comments section. I'll see if I can get those up in like a shorts video or something, but overall it's definitely a very impressively sized Giganotosaurus. So this Prime 1 Studios Jurassic World Dominion 1/38 scale Giganotosaurus is definitely a nice figure, but it could have been nicer. Overall, I would say the sculpt on this may be the best on the market. I feel like when it comes to capturing the likeness of the Giganotosaurus, they absolutely nailed it. It looks fantastic from head to tail when it comes to the sculpt. It is extremely highly detailed and very vibrant when it comes to the fine detail. It also has captured all of the injuries and scars and everything through the course of the body, which are also really nice. Again, it's always great to see that. Even that tear in the gum, which is something that I feel like is honestly very important for the Giganotosaurus to have. The area that's lacking, again, is the paintwork. I feel like it looks good for what it is. It just needed a little bit more precise paintwork and a little bit more care added to the paintwork. Like, the patterning in the face doesn't really look that great. The patterning through the body doesn't really match up to the way it looks on the Giganotosaurus. It doesn't look bad. It honestly doesn't by any means. It looks pretty good as far as the patterning goes. It just could have looked a little bit better, especially considering the price of the figure. The biggest downside for me, though, when it comes to the paintwork is the dry brushing. The dry brushing is the problem for me because a lot of the dry brushing doesn't really look that good. It's very inconsistent, as some areas are really dark when it comes to the dry brushing. Some areas are lighter. Some areas don't really seem to have been hit with the dry brushing much at all. So it's very inconsistent when it comes to the paintwork, and the way they've applied the dry brushing looks more often than not kind of like paint on a figure rather than body color, which does kind of affect the final product a bit. But overall, I would say it's still not terrible. It still looks pretty good. It just could have been a little better. Regardless, I would say it's definitely worth picking up, though. Like, if you are a fan of the Jurassic World Dominion Giganotosaurus, it is easily one of the best on the market that you can find. So if you are interested, I will include a link in the description to where you can grab it from Big Bad Toy Store. So make sure you check that link, pick this up if you want it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.